Hi, my name's Toby Mathis with Anderson Business Advisors. I'm one of the founding partners, and for the last 20-something years, I've been working exclusively with business owners and investors in the areas of tax and asset protection, business planning, and estate planning. Today, I want to address our friends out there in the medical profession. So this is tax and asset protection for doctors. And believe it or not, this is actually something that is fairly specialized, although good luck finding those specialists. It is something that you need to know, and the only way you're going to learn about it is to actually use the old Nike phrase, you gotta just do it. So first off, I'm a legal professional. I'm an attorney. I'm not a medical doctor. However, I work with a ton of medical doctors, including some very good groups. And what we learn is that there's some areas that they really need to be addressing. And I'm going to address 3 of them in 3 separate videos. This one, we're going to be focusing on your practice. The second video, we're going to be focusing in on your investments and things outside of your practice. And the third is going to be focusing in on your life and what you do, both charitable and how you create a plan for your family. So I'm going to use an old adage, which is old Ben Franklin. I'm actually from Philadelphia. So Ben Franklin from Philadelphia once said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, you doctors use this in the medical profession, but it actually came out of the idea that there was fires going on in the city and they wanted to prevent fires in the city. So he said, hey, the old firefighter's idea is the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. It works in the legal profession. It works in the medical profession. And boy, it does work for preventing fires, especially back when Ben lived. But the whole idea is we're just going to use the same analogy. You are going to treat all of these things as though they're fire. And with fire, the idea is if you can compartmentalize it, starve it from oxygen or starve oxygen from it so it loses its fuel. And we have systems set up to put out smaller fires so they don't become big fires. We're going to be far better off. And in the medical profession, it's going to be the same thing. When you have a practice, you need to know what is flammable. Now, right out the gate, people always say, well, then just don't use fire. You know, or in my world, they always say in tax and asset protection, if you don't want to pay taxes, don't do anything. You know, if you don't want to be sued for anything, don't do anything, you know, to go out there and be homeless. And yeah, homeless people tend not to get sued. But obviously that's just not, unless, you know, that's not reasonable and that's not an actual answer. Where there's always going to be a chance of fire, like on a boat. And we'll use ships for that example. That's probably the worst thing that could happen out at sea is that there's fire. It's going to happen. So you have to put up measures to prevent it from destroying your entire boat. And so that's where they use firewalls to cut off areas of the ship. If something catches fire, they're able to cut it off and in many cases starve it of oxygen or use fire retardant or something else to combat it. Or you just try to put it out. Or if it's a complete loss, it doesn't take down the entire vessel. And we're just going to use that as the same analogy in your practice. You need to be able to compartmentalize your practice so that you can firewall it off. You need to address those things that you know could happen. So like, for example, if you have a kitchen on a vessel, you know that there could be a fire. So you're going to have fire extinguishers. You're going to have sprinklers, or you're going to have something else that enables us to put it out. And God forbid you can't, you're going to wall it off. And the same is true of your business. I get this a lot. Hey, I'm a small town doctor. I don't make a ton of money or something like that. And what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is one situation, and it doesn't have to be a patient, by the way. One situation causes you to lose everything and comes right on out. We use this in investments too, which we'll cover in section 2. But if you buy a rental property, for example, $50,000 rental property in Indianapolis or something, hey, I'm going to pick up some investments. What's the worst that could happen is they garnish you for the rest of your life. That's the worst that could happen. It's not just that property unless you wall it off. And so we're going to be talking a lot about isolating risk. Let's just talk about some of the liabilities. And again, I use the fire analogy, but areas where you could have fires break out in your practice. And we have to address them all. Quite often, your first line of defense is your fire extinguisher, which may be getting an insurance policy or good policies in place. Your sprinkler system is probably going to be like an umbrella policy in case the fire extinguisher doesn't work. And the walling it off is by using a legal entity to make sure that the legal or that the practice, the medical practice, is isolated from your other assets. And so we're going to just combine those. So what are the ways that there could actually be a fire? So let's just go right off the big one is if you're in the medical profession, it could be E&O insurance. And you know that it's not exactly cheap. And that's because people make claims. There's frivolous claims and there's valid claims. The idea is to avoid paying frivolous claims and to avoid paying excess claims. In other words, somebody sues you when you did nothing wrong. You want to be able to immediately starve that of oxygen, have a fire extinguisher, put it out, and be done with it. Move on your life. Just say that's a cost of doing business. If it's a bigger one, you want to make sure that you have insurance like an umbrella policy or something else that you're able to use and that there's money there. And those, more than likely, that's going to be a legitimate claim or it exceeds a policy limit of some sort. Maybe it's something that you had no idea was going to happen and it just happens. There are mistakes made by everybody out there. In fact, we call it the practice of law and the practice of medicine for a reason. We're always practicing, right? Well, there is some truth to that. And if you make a mistake, you don't want it to be a career-ending mistake. And so you still want there to be insurance there. You want there to be the umbrella policy to cover you. What you don't want is an excess claim where somebody puts their ears back and say, aha, I got you. And it's really a $500,000 claim. But because there's no stopping it, there's no walls around it. It just keeps feeding and there's other fuel to be gathered. And that could be your house. That could be your investment accounts. That could be rental properties. That could be other assets that you're holding, even stocks and bonds and things like that. And they just go on a feeding frenzy because there's so much fuel. In reality, what we want to do is isolate that. So the first thing we do on your practice is make sure that you're operating through an entity. And that way, if there is a claim, that we're putting clamps down. If it exceeds those walls, then we put boxes around the other assets. And we'll be getting into that when we talk about investments. But that E&O claim, first off, we want to make sure that there's coverage for it. And we want to make sure it's isolated. Now, let me talk about the liability sources that we don't often consider when we're in a practice or in a business. And these are the things that would definitely stop within those walls of that entity. Let's say it's a professional corporation or a professional limited liability company. Every state is a little bit different, but it's always going to be an entity. If you need to ask questions about what would work in your state, please give us a call and we would certainly help you with that. But you need to have that box first and foremost. Then we have other areas. And the number one area I have seen as of recent that's really causing disruption to businesses is the employment practice area where you're dealing with sexual harassment, discrimination, wrongful termination, wrongful non-hiring. All those things come in underneath that big envelope of employment practice. And you want to make sure that you have that type of coverage. And you want to make sure that you have a good umbrella insurance policy. By the way, umbrella is a secondary insurance to the primary. So you have your E&O, you have your EPLI claim, which is the employment practice, and all those things. You have your regular insurance, and then you have something on the outside. It's extremely inexpensive. Less than $1,000 a year is going to get you several $1 million of coverage. And it's there in case it exceeds the policy limits of a regular practice. And so we're immediately putting something in place. This is our big old sprinkler system. This is like, again, if we have a fire, I want to be able to go whoosh and put it out. If it's too big, like there's something that really happened that was bad, you have your sprinklers that put it out. And that's when you actually had harm. That's not a frivolous claim. Frivolous claim, if there's no fuel, people are lazy, whoosh, you're using that extinguisher and you're putting it out. That's 9 times out of 10, that's going to take it. You're going to settle because they don't see a huge payday. But let's just say, all right, we want to make sure your personal assets are not on the table. We want to make sure that we have a good insurance policy with a good umbrella. The second one is your property damage. Like you have equipment and other things inside your your practice. You have furniture, you have the actual computers, you have other assets, you have intellectual property, you have client lists, you have all these things. You want to make sure that you're covering for that as well. I have seen businesses brought to their knees. In fact, I saw a business doing over $100 million a year get nailed on loss of property. They actually had a earthquake happen, and it cracked a water line that shot water up into the building. And they had just like the worst luck ever is they had insurance, but their insurance broker had screwed up their insurance policy. So they dropped a zero on it. So they didn't have nearly the amount of insurance that they thought. And they had displaced people. We want to make sure we have business interruption insurance too. They did not have that. So they had to replace all these people. It was about 400 people. They had to fix the building. They had all these cash draws, and it put them into bankruptcy. So I've actually seen a business destroyed by simple property claims. The other one is business crimes. No matter how hard you try, no matter what everything you do, there are people that are going to come and try to take what's yours at some point during your life. There's a strong likelihood of that occurring. And especially if you have a practice, and it could be somebody coming in and stealing equipment. It could be internal theft from an employee. It could be an outside cyber attack where they go in and they breach your data. And just imagine you have somebody on your staff who takes all of your client files and puts them on the internet, and you have all those claims you get to deal with. You gotta make sure that you have coverage for these things, or you'll be very displeased if you ever deal with employee dishonesty, doing stuff like that, or if you're ever hacked by an outside hacker. We're seeing more and more of it. So please address it. It's actually a very critical issue. Now, because we cannot predict the future, because we don't know everything that could possibly happen, and there's no way to say it's going to happen or it's not going to happen for certain, you want to make sure you have the basic insurance coverage. You want to make sure that you have a good umbrella, and you want to make sure you have a box around that business to mitigate that damage on that practice. If you do those three basic little things, you're going to be far more apt to be successful than the people that don't, and you're not going to be blindsided. Now, if you couple those ideas and those three things with your practice, and then you follow the recommendations we give on your investments and your life, then it's really, really difficult, if not next to impossible, for somebody to breach your firewalls and actually destroy it. Like, a lot of doctors are very concerned about that buzzword asset protection. What we really should be saying is asset isolation and mitigation and prevention of claims being made against you. And so that you personally are never going to be sitting there on the hook, and that you have to worry about your livelihood and your family in all of your assets being taken away over something that you may or may not have done. In all cases, it's about mitigating claims and about mitigating your tax hit and mitigating your expense so that you're able to keep your money in your pocket. In this next section, we're going to be talking about your investments and how they interplay with your practice.